I hadn't seen that version. There's some new things in it. Different. I didn't like the ending as much. It used to end with permaculture fire, didn't it? Which I thought was a nicer, to me, more about what the house is about. The drum skin I sold for £5,000. That's the great inheritance of CRASS. We started a studio. We built a studio in the garden at home. And the one thing we had to have was a Neumann microphone, which they're about £3,000. And an American collector had been around. He's bought quite a bit of G stuff, which is all stuff which has gone to bringing me 160,000 quid. We're down to 12 now. What was left after we bought the Neumann out of that £5,000 then went to the people we owed the money. And actually, in terms of the trust thing, we pretty much believe we're going to have it paid off by summer of this year. And that means possibly this time next year it will be in trust. And I can rest my weary bones. I don't really mean that, but I mean, in a way, I've taken on a lot of stuff over the last 10 years since we bought the house, or however long it was, 7, maybe 10, I can't remember. We've gone down some pretty strange avenues to see whether or not we can raise funds. As you probably know, G worked very closely with Banksy and a lot of stuff, and then so got incorporated into his mega business, and actually made quite a lot of money on sales through that, etc., etc. I feel we remain true in the sense that, G in particular, more than myself, is able to make very large amounts of money. Part of that is she's set up Existential as a publishing company. She's already publishing work which clearly is never going to make any money, which is rather how CRASS Records operated. It was financed by CRASS because we could make a lot of money. I think with the exception of about 2 bands, we lost on virtually every of the 50 or so bits of work we put out. Not lost badly, we certainly didn't make any money out of it. But then that wasn't the point. The other point in that film was, at the time I was going through, complete hell. I'd fallen in love. G was at art school. We were partners, and we hadn't been partners for many, many, many years. But anyway, a woman had come to live at the house. I fallen in love with that adventure, and I actually left our house for about 4 years after that, firm in the belief that it was in good hands. Still very engaged with her. I'd come back for 1 month out of every 3. But I did lose my grip with him. I also lost my health trying to live on, partly because I don't know how to deal with the land in Wales. I can read the weather here, I know the soil. After 50 years of working there, I found it terribly difficult surviving on a purely physical level, because I wasn't used to reading the weather, reading the soil, etc., etc. And frankly, I wasn't used to having to go out the door with a key and lock it afterwards, please. Did you lock up tonight, and these sorts of things. And the whole lifestyle, it was a complete absurd theatre. It was an absolute piece of vanity. Older man, younger woman, pure vanity. I knew it from the start, but I played the game within it of vanity, and it actually, in the end, Niall killed me through cancer and various other horrible illnesses, which I'm completely out of now. And over the last year, since I have been clear of all that, my life has been a complete rebirth. I've never felt happier, I've never felt more joyful, I've never felt more confident, not about myself, but about our future as the the future of humanity. I see so many wonderful, beautiful things happening, not on the scale that, you know, Starbucks can operate, but on the scale that we can operate, and that excites me enormously. There's a sort of beauty growing amongst the common people of the world, and that beauty is that we can help each other, and you know, that's very much represented what Graham Culture organisation was talking about, and that's the community I belong to. I mean, I have to say that that other community is just of no interest to me whatsoever. I mean, I don't want to engage with negativity in my life. Why should I be engaged by it? You know, there's joy and beauty and love beyond all of that. I don't need to be dragged back into that pit. Those are thoughts I've had, you know, watching that, and all little things that happened since that. Have any of you got anything?
I was thinking about the sort of, are you aware of the enormity of the impact that you had of a generation? I was at school when CRASS came out, and there was fuck all else out there other than, it was great as a teenager. You know, it took that punk era to say, to a thinking level.
Yes, I am aware of it, very aware of it. I'm aware also, you know, that I'm not aware in a few, that was super, wasn't it? Jolly good, didn't we do a good job? I'm more aware on the level that, you know, I used to have a model when CRASS existed, and he was a sort of Glaswegian kid, of 14, mad CRASS fan. I knew he couldn't sustain like we could, you know, he was living in the Gorbals and in the slums. He was only an imaginary figure, but we met them everywhere we went. So I really lived by what he could do, not by what I could do. You know, he couldn't go for holiday in Costa Brava, so I didn't go for holidays in the Costa Brava. You know, that was certainly the case, and that stuck with me for a long time after CRASS had finished, and still in a way is with me. I mean, not to quite that degree. I mean, I do take a week's holiday in Barcelona every year now with G, and we normally end up working, doing something or other, but nonetheless, it's, you know, getting away from there. But anyway, so I created this model, and one of the things that's most upset me is the misrepresentation of what was achieved, not by CRASS, but by us as a body of people. It was probably one of the most profound uprisings, cultural uprisings in the 20th century. There's very little to compare with it. You could possibly compare what happened in the Sorbonne in Paris 68, but that didn't create a movement, it simply was a summer. You could possibly, on the artistic level, compare it to the Dada movement, who was a creative political union which had a profound cultural effect. The fact that the movement, you know, call it the peace movement, call it whatever you like, I don't really care what it's called really, but there was it's called the punk movement quite often, was created not in the world that was demonstrated in the film shown earlier, Don Lett's film, about punk narcissism, about nihilism, about jacking up, about, you know, seeing whether I look good enough in the mirror to go in front of my audience of 3. Something followed after that. That was just a part of the rock and roll theatre. And that was a profound recognition that, you know, that if we helped each other, we could help each other, literally. I mean, it was a mutual thing. And there was never, you know, the kid, my imaginary kid in Glasgow helped me to have the strength to say no. I didn't have a lot to say no about. I came from a very comfortable background, thank you very much indeed. You know, I can have what I want. Well, imagining that, and of course that happened with Steve as well. I mean, that's why we had such an amazing kinship. He knew how to get stuff off of the street I'd been trained to defend that. You know, it was my right to have what was in the street. You know, that's the sort of schooling I came from. But I always had that picture, because that was the body of our following, if you want to call it that. You know, it starts as a following and then became masses, you know, thousands upon thousands of friends, really. And I'll still fight that cause very strongly. I mean, I still believe, alongside Ian Bone, God bless his soul, you know, the class war is the war. That all war is down to class. You know, it's the elite defending itself against any form of intrusion. You know, wherever it comes from, whether it comes from women, feminism, whether it comes from blacks, racism, or whatever the opposite to racism, etc., etc., etc. It always comes from the deprived, or the malnourished, or the underprivileged, or the unprivileged. You know, and it always is the same body of people strutting around on their platforms above us. So it is class war, always. So yes, I'm very aware, and I'm very aware of the responsibility that I still and I continue to feel. I mean, the only thing that a following, if you want to call it that, or a kinship, if you want to call it that, or a movement, is that actually that's a responsibility. You know, and that I still, in different ways, but in whatever way I possibly can, I fight the cause. I remember back in, I think it was 2000, I noticed in some literary magazine a thing about a punk conference, that academics were going to have a punk conference. I thought, oh, are you fucking going to have a punk conference? So I'd like to know about that. So I can play that game, you know, so I wrote to them and said, oh, I'm very, very interested. I'd really love to come along, chaps. You know, I think I could. And so I got invited as a speaker. And the thing I hate about those things is you'll have about 4 things going on at once, and you have to take your choices about these academic meetings. Anyway, I mean, it was just extraordinary that nothing at all was mentioned about, you know, what I'm defining as the movement. Absolutely nothing. It all stopped in '78. It was all about how many safety pins you'd got through your penis, or all about what sort of guitar strings you were using, or what sort of, you know, substance you were abusing your life and heart and soul with, etc., etc. And since then, I've fiendishly maintained contact with some of those academics. I mean, I'm going up to another punk academic now in Oxford. You know, it's no longer the sort of red brick, it's gone grey stone now. There's a conference in June which I'm going to attend, and I don't actually enjoy doing that sort of stuff. But I think it's a responsibility, because that kid in Glasgow put his neck on the fucking board. I didn't ever. You know, I'd always got background. I was always safe. And those people weren't safe. They were living in ghastly deprived conditions, very violent conditions. They were going to get it, I wasn't. They were the little kids who went out wearing a badge with CRASS written on it and got shit beaten out of them. Well, that's a responsibility. There's not a lot of pleasure in that. I mean, I'm glad to do it, and I'm happy to do it, and I want to do it, and I'll continue to do it until I drop dead, because I believe what we did was worthwhile. I believe what we're doing now is worthwhile. The beauty is meeting hundreds of people, and it has to be hundreds, if not thousands of people across the world who were inspired at that time in history to become their own self. And some of them are gardeners, and some of them are bakers, and some of them are painters. Masses of them are in the media. There's hardly anyone, you know, when I'm contacted by the media, who hasn't done so. Oh yeah, well I remember da-di-da-di. It's quite extraordinary. I mean, like that I can't believe. I'm aware of these things, but I can't believe it when, you know, sort of like the main editor for Penguin says, oh yeah, I absolutely love what you're doing. I mean, yeah, all right. How about publishing my book, my latest book? No, well, you know, we'll leave that a little while.
That's what I mean, it's the seeds that still are there.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's beautiful. You know, and some of them flourish in a funny way. I mean, you know, the fact that you can now buy, you know, decent vegetarian food in Tesco's is, you know, not exactly how I'd like to have seen it. I'd like to have seen it so there's hundreds of wonderful little, you know, DIY little shops and holes in the walls, etc. But it hasn't happened that way. But at least there's a consciousness that's appeared within mainstream society. And that's more important than the fact that, you know, bands are now reforming and going and playing in Blackpool. I mean, I don't think a great deal is going to be gained in that. I think there is a sort of big, I mean, actually, I thought just the fact of David Beckham wearing a CRASS t-shirt was actually okay, because, you know, thousands of people look at it. The next time they see a CRASS symbol, it might very well be how to make your own bread, or some other bit of ephemera that gets wafted out into the ether. So I've never been, it doesn't actually concern me in that way particularly, certainly not now. I mean, the more the merrier, really. Yeah, so I think that explains that.
Yeah, from a similar vein, I remember leaving school and finding a CRASS album, and from there on totally believing in the CRASS ethos, but also I found myself having to get a job and become part of the system, and I always found that, you know, quite a contradiction really, and I always felt I was selling out by having a job all day, and in fact I work for the Ministry of Defence.
Yeah.
And you know, it's always been there really.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it boils down to by any means possible. I mean, what was Einstein? He was a clerk, wasn't he? And I mean, you can invent relativity whilst you're fiddling the books. I mean, sort of thing, you understand what I mean? You know, we all go through, I mean, I had to work until CRASS, and that was harder work than any work I'd ever done. And yeah, I know that there are apparent contradictions, but it's by any means. I mean, and essentially, you know, I'm not about to say that everything I do is from my soul or from my heart. I would hope and pray that it is, but I, you know, can't guarantee to you that Mr. Ego pops in. But by any means, and I will use any means. I mean, I recently started working with this Italian dance outfit called the Bloody Beetroots, you know, and they're sort of massive in America, almost unheard of here. They got in touch. I googled them because I'd never heard of them, and you know, there's pictures of Miami, fucking great stadium, lots of fair-haired Aryans sort of boned out of their bonds his way. And I thought, fuck off, you've got to be joking. And then I thought, hang on, I've just written a piece called Black Man in the White House. And it basically, I can never remember my own words, but roughly speaking it says, Black Man in the White House, over 1 million incarcerated by the corporate jails of the United States of America. So it's about mass incarceration. You know, there's one black man in the White House, but actually 2 million blacks in America are currently labelled as felon, which means they are non-citizens, which is the new form of slavery. And I mean, it's a major... Well, I thought, hey, this is a great idea. There's all of these sort of beautiful Aryan kids all waving their fingers around to the dance music. I was about getting that poem with dance music, and I really thought Bob, who's the guy who's Roberto probably, I know him as Bob, I sent him the lyrics to the poem, thinking he'd just write back and say, you've got to be joking, son. And he wrote back and said, fucking great, when do we start? Limo comes round. I get first of all taken off. What?
Down that bumpy road.
Yeah, amazing. And they didn't complain, the local taxi service does. Flight to Venice, do a little bit of rehearsal, back, 30-piece string orchestra, etc., 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 all this sort of shit. I actually got paid. and I'll get paid an awful lot more. That then gave me, I've been working for the last 8 years on I've got about 8 albums, which because Southern, who was CRASS Records, is all but collapsed through one reason or another. You know, I've not been able to release anything. Well, at last I'm in a position where I can give the fucking stuff away, because I can work using the money from the Beetroots. I can now finance setting up a website, and you know, that's my next project, set up a free download website with all of that material. I mean, what I want to do is make Eve's taken on the job of making images for me as well, so you don't just get the noise, you get the pictures as well, etc., etc. So that's a sort of advancement of some of the stuff we were talking about in the movie, you know, sort of like using. So by any means, that, you know, that's, so really I'm working with an outfit, and I've actually, you know, now I've got to know Bob from the Beetroots. He's a very committed anarchist. That's where he came from. He came from the punk thing and then got into what so many young kids do, got into the wrong substances and made all sorts of bad decisions, which is probably why he ended up being so massive, because people who make bad decisions seem to end up getting massive in this sort of world. We like our victims. Anyway, he sort of like hit that peak and realised he was fucking himself up, and he's sort of coming down the other side and met me. So we're actually going to do an album together, which is great, etc., etc. I mean, that's actually why I bought this whistle, because we had a business meeting in Venice about 3 weeks ago, so I went into Primark and bought this for 30 quid, because it was all going to be filmed for the movie. And I think it's quite fun to play all that shit, as long as you know what you're going to do with it. If you're good in your head, it's fun. And actually, you know, that poem, which I performed quite a lot last year with various different outfits, all of them within the sort of avant-garde jazz domain, listened to by small audiences, because in the avant-garde jazz department you only get small audiences. That poem's now going to be listened to by thousands and thousands and thousands of kids who are not exposed to that way of thinking. And if 5 of them say, fucking hell, is that what's going on? Then the job's done. I mean, that was all we ever hoped for in any of our biggest gigs as CRASS. You know, the argument was, as well as one person goes away wanting to make a better life for themselves and for others, then we've done our job. One person is the same as 1,000 if you're talking to people. In a way more important. So I don't know where all that came from. No, I don't think there's any contradiction in that at all.
I always found, I remember you used to, you know, left wing, right wing, they're all the same. I mean, as a working class kid, during the Thatcher time, I was really into the left wing, really, and I felt disappointed that CRASS wasn't supporting that at the time, in that was the thing against Thatcher. But
yeah, but I think that the left is so morbid and so boring, and it talks about the people, and very often isn't one of them.
Well, it's very very nanny-ish, isn't it?
It's very nanny-ish. Yeah. I know a lot of academic socialists who are constantly defending the rights of the working people whilst driving around in four-wheel drives and living in very nice houses, thank you very much indeed, and lecturing at Oxford University. And I don't actually... I find that department of the left, the sort of SWP department, just utterly yawn-making. It's grey, it's
I think it's become what I call the chattering classes now.
Yeah, but so dull, and it doesn't... I mean, at least the right has gusto and impudence and flamboyance, which one can laugh at, and it is laughable. And occasionally they make a good point. As does the left, of course, but you know, I mean, I really think that as social realism was as much a sort of Nazi fad as it certainly was in Soviet Russia, and that is just dull dull as shit. So, yeah. And in any case, you know, if anything, I think it was very important, you know, to go on a slightly different tangent. You know, I mean, to disappoint people's expectations was one of the jobs we set out to achieve, because that's very important. You know, destroy expectations.
Is it? I get the impression that a lot of the violence at your gigs was actually from the left wing, trying to beat up the fascists.
Yeah. They were jealous. Well, they were. I mean, there was a major. The first big battle was when the group called, I can't even remember, they called the Red something or other faction or something crap like that. You know, who were sort of basically, I think they were Arsenal supporters. Anyway, they decided that we'd got too big a skinhead audience. And I mean, in fact, of course, some of the skinheads pretended to be BM. If you want to be hard, you pretend to be BM, don't you? You know, they were no more bloody fascist than I am. You know, ask any one of them, you know, could you explain the basics, sort of tenets of fascism, old chap? Mate, what the fuck are you talking about? You know, so I mean, the idea, I mean, that was, and I hated that glorification, you know, of the anti-Nazi league. Well, let's call it the anti-poor working class pissed off league, because that's what it was. Yes, and there were some nasty shite people who just, you know, I remember playing in Reading, and where we had a lot of trouble, kids coming in, doing their stuff. Well, outside there was a Mercedes with 5 exceedingly unpleasant looking hoods, basically, who were sort of saying, well, you go back in there, kids. And I have to admit that I decided not to stroll over to the Mercedes to have a little contretemps with them. I thought, no, fuck that, you know, I'd come out very bad from that. I'd just go and whack one of the ones inside. Yeah, I mean, I'm not underplaying the importance and the threat of bad thinking, I think, but I have to say that I think an awful lot of bad thinking comes from the left as much as it does from the right. But on the level of the violence, I think most of the violence was passive violence from the left towards an imagined right. And in my experience of the majority of the skinheads who, when we met a lot, was all they wanted was actually love. It's what most people want, really. I mean, the left are a little bit too intellectual to accept theories like love. You best not bother. You know, they'll come up with a bit of sort of Freud to put you in your place. And there's a sort of openness about, you know, that openness of the street. It's called brotherhood or sisterhood or whatever you want to call it, but it's very easy and it's very quick. There's no intellectual defence. And the left is full of intellectual defence, and that's why I loathe it. And I think it's very damaging. It damages creativity. It damages the right to experiment, if you like, in one's own human nature. I mean, something like Dial House, which has been an extraordinary human experiment, couldn't fit into leftist ideology because it hasn't got a program. That's dangerous.
You've got a view on political correctness, because I think it's the new fascism.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, it prevents us from actually entering into, you know, the real dialogues of the day. You know, race being one of them, male aggression being another, the new feminist movement, which, you know, the schisms, you know, are, you know, the sort of new tart look, which I'm sure is a form of new feminism, is not one I easily accept. I've tried to learn without getting an erection.
I have to say, Ken, further what this gentleman was saying, what you're saying, myself, I was kind of quite involved with the SWP. We just sell the paper and that on the street and all this kind of thing. Until I heard CRASS, which as I was telling you earlier, was actually in that shop, projector,
Right, yeah.
which used to be right next door. And that kind of shifted my thinking, because, you know, I kind of knew Thatcher wasn't, you know, it was the era of Thatcher. Thatcher was oppressing us, Labour hadn't worked, Labour, the SWP to me as a young man, 17, 18 years old, seemed to offer the answers.
Yeah.
But I heard that song, you know, with the line Marx fucks, and that kind of was a bit kind of zen. You can't say that about Marx, you know, great man, all that theory. But it kind of, it was that little kind of tilt in the thinking, which led me to perhaps more imaginative thinking, if you like. So it kind of led me from the SWP thing, you know, traditional leftism, into like anarchist thought. And back in the day, when I used to quite often meet people who come up and say, yeah, I was in the National Front, you know, until I heard CRASS. So there was you know, there was something that knocked people's thinking into new.
Well, I mean, clearly that was highly intentional and, you know, in my case, studied.
Yeah. I saw that later, but
yeah.
You know.
But I mean, Reality Asylum was a lovely example of that, for which, you know, we were up for criminal blasphemy for quite a while, which is, you know, the most vicious attack I've ever read on Christianity, most savage and apparently unthinking. I mean, I actually did make sure that I could defend every single point in that particular song, and that I could have a very good body of historians and witnesses to support some of the, I mean, for example, saying that Christ dug the pits of Auschwitz is a sort of fairly heavy thing to say. And I wanted to be able to know that I would have support from Jewish historians for that view, which I did get. So that didn't go out mindlessly, it was all very, very carefully considered. Because I knew that if we were put into court, then actually I could make even more of a story of it, which is largely why they dropped the case, of course. Anyway, the point I was really going to was the most surprising thing about that, apart from getting, that was the only time we ever got a direct letter from the Sicilian Brotherhood saying, "Watch your fucking step, boys." But apart from that, a very large number of letters from Christians saying they really appreciated that degree of analysis, and it actually had enabled them to strengthen their faith, because they'd taken on their own faith out of it, and that was what was important. I mean, it doesn't matter to me what people think. People think what they need to think, but what I do believe is you have to get rid of the sort of hoodwinking of the common designated place that you are. You are white, working class, uneducated, all the things that you're told you are, or you're upper class, or you're black, or you're a woman, boo. And all that I ever wrote, you know, and I think the other people in the band as well, wrote was designed for people to question themselves, to stop just endlessly blaming and looking at yourself. And even the most blaming of our songs, which was probably Yes Sir I Will, which savagely went into every single detail that I could think of within the consensual world, within everyday material society, all the time it was talking about the passive observer. And what I was trying to make people realise, as I was trying to make myself realise, just, am I the passive observer? What am I not doing? How can I do better? And that's all that the interest was. Now, I'm not interested in overthrowing the system at all. I'm interested in people overthrowing their system of control from outside, their conditioning, so that they're free to make their decisions. Because it's only when people are free to make their own decisions that the revolution will happen. It might be happening at the moment because everyone's doing it, I don't know.
I get the impression we're further away than we were.
Huh?
I think we're further away than we were, aren't we? Or...
No.
No?
No, I really don't think so.
Do you know, I think things become more conservative. I was going to ask you about the sort of religious side of things. Now we've got all kinds of religious hatred. Yeah, you can say that things were then, now, without...
I could.
But generally, it doesn't happen within the media, it doesn't happen within, which I think is a huge shame. I think it was quite the stuff that was being said then. challenge it, we do seem to become more conservative. Even if you go back, I don't know, Sex Pistols, whatever, you didn't get a title of an album called Them Bollocks, let alone half the stuff that you guys were saying.
Maybe I just don't like to think that, but I actually don't think it's that. I really don't. I mean, I believe in life.
So that, maybe the grip might be trying to hold on a bit tighter. That's the best way to say it.
Yeah, but it's a bit like the sort of, that awful, the one about the greasy tit. No, I couldn't quite grasp it either. Well, I mean, it's a bit like that, isn't it? I mean, it's sort of crap joke, I know, but I mean, they're not getting a stronger grasp on me.
No. Desperate with it, though.
I
think they get more desperate with trying to put control.
They are getting more desperate, yeah. I mean, health and safety are the sort of SS of the material world. The material world is fucked. So health and safety moves in to make sure what little elements are sort of tightly locked up and you can't go through the fucking door. They don't realise, there's cracks in the wall, there's no fucking ceiling. I mean, they're just so dumb. That jailers are always pretty dumb people. They don't realise that heart and soul can glide through walls. Physically, some of us can do it and some of us can't. I've tried and it doesn't work, but I mean, you have a go, you might do it. But I just believe, I mean, on the one hand, you can look at the Holocaust as being this ghastly, awful, blah, blah, blah. On the other hand, there's two other ways of looking at it. One is an incredible, an unbelievable success of humankind to survive. I know millions didn't, but equally thousands did. And that each one of those, why do we look to the millions who didn't survive rather than to the ones that did? I'll tell you why, that even the Jewish brethren, they didn't for some time allow any form of acknowledgement of either women's activity in the camps or some of the escaped, because their control would be challenged, etc., etc. So what was I saying? I'm going to get lost and I don't want to lose this one. The other thing was that everything, that's what, the reason I don't like the negative is it couldn't have been any other way. What's happening just at the moment couldn't be any other way. It's absolutely de facto. There's not much you can say that is absolutely indisputable. But it is absolutely indisputable that what is happening at this very moment could only be as it is. At this very moment, 5,000 people are being killed by an earthquake, a kid's having his head kicked in, 2 million people are making love. Whatever's going on, that is the only way it could be. Let's wait 5 seconds. This is the only way it could be. Well, another way of looking at the Holocaust is, we've fucking done it. We got here. And that's what we're representing. It's a bit like the kid in Glasgow. I'll fucking do it for you. All of those people dead, I'm here. They are of me. They allow me to... 10 seconds on. It's the only way it could be. What do we do? It's the only way it could be. Oh, it's fucking awful. I give up. Look at war. Look at the unemployment. Look at... Or, I'm here. And once you go, I'm here, there's nothing to stop you. We're endlessly stopped by histories, and they're false. They happen, but why do we look at the negative of it? Why don't we see that everything that happened to allow us to be here at this moment? And what do we do with this moment? Did you hear 3 people died in the caravan crash? So fucking what? All the time, if I could give you a sort of social tip, if someone ever says, oh, did you hear? Get out quick, because you're about to hear about 3 people dying in the caravan fire. 58 women being raped in the Gambia, or some other ghastly bit of shit which is designed to fuck you over and keep you in place. And that's the only reason it's there. If you want to know about those things, read intelligent books about human behaviour. You don't need it. That's why I never watch the television. That's why I never read newspapers. If I want to engage in stuff, I engage intelligently, not with morons. You know, I'm getting a bit sort of preachy, I'm sorry about that, I apologise. But, so anyway, no, I don't buy into the it's getting worse. Of course it isn't getting worse. If it is getting worse, it's quite simply because at this moment we're allowing it, and I'm not fucking allowing it. Good?
Last year there was down here, sorry. There was I read about there was this conflict between CRASS and Anarchist.net.
Sorry?
There was this online conflict between CRASS and Anarchist.net, where they got taking down thousands of consenting bands, albums and stuff on the internet. They consented to it, available for free download.
Oh, yeah, I don't know very much about that, and I'm not actually very interested in it, but because you were talking about sort of what in the music business is called piracy.
Yeah, I just wanted to know what your angle was on that.
I couldn't care a fuck, quite honestly. Alison at Southend did care a fuck because basically Southend, which is CRASS Records, is struggling financially, as is any label within the music business. Yeah, maybe it's a bit galling that, you know, that particular network who are in America somewhere, aren't they? Kind of punk something, I mean, they were actually releasing stuff before we'd even fucking got it in the market, for Christ's sake. You know, they were getting, I think that, you know, Feeding the 5,000 was available from them sooner than it was us. You know, I've just spent 5 years bloody remastering it. And I have to say I haven't had a penny from it, because there isn't a penny to be made from it. Although, you know, we've sold something like 15 to 20,000 copies of it. You know, I haven't seen a penny, just for the record. So it pissed me off a bit when, you know, I heard about that site, you know, accusing me above all as being a sort of capitalist bastard for wanting to sell records that I've just spent 5 years working on. Well, I actually don't care a shit, you know, if they want to download them, let them, I'm really not concerned. And I'll play them at their own game. I'm going to you know, have my own work downloaded for nothing. You know, I don't need them to do it for me, thanks very much. So, yeah, I mean, and Alison, I suppose rightly, I mean, she's got, you know, to pay for the studio, she has to pay for the, well, paid out of our makings, but, you know, she was getting in the shit, she couldn't keep up. So that, you know, it's all very well those guys sort of, you know, calling the holy name, oh, well, we thought you were anarchists. Well, yeah, we are anarchists, but like anyone else, you know, we need to be able to survive somehow or other. So I haven't got much more to say about it than that. I mean, I get fucking bored with anarchists who sort of think that, you know, you shouldn't have to pay for a gig. But if you, for example, we would have people in the days of CRASS, oh, well, we thought it was anarchists, and we never paid, you know, we never charged more than about £3, I think, for a gig in the days where you were paying tenner. And any money we did make would go to the local community, except for our petrol and whatever we needed to eat that evening. You know, but still these buggers would be saying, go on, we want to get in free. And if you let them in free, they'd be straight to the bar and they'd spend 3 times the amount it would have cost them to. And you can get a bit pissed off with that. There was a guy who's been visiting Dial House for about 2 or 3 years. He's not someone I automatically like. It's an open door, so he comes through the open door. He'd always leave little trails. There's a certain personality that you learn a lot about people when you live with hundreds of people like I do, passing through my life. Feathers, absolute giveaway. If there's little feathers lying around, just be slightly cautious. If there's little stones with the feathers, be a little bit more cautious. If there's straws sort of running in little lines, be deadly cautious because you're going to have a bad evening. Anyway, in this particular instance, this guy was coming in, he was terribly into the spiritual world, and he'd always bow very sort of politely and bless me with all sort of Indian stuff. And anyway, I went away for a couple of weeks, came back, I think I was in Montreal or something like that. Anyway, when I came back, G was away and no one was there for that particular day. There were people living there, there was no one there that day. Anyway, I came into the house and I moment, feathers, stones, straw, bad news, got round into the outside part and bits had been moved around, you know, some of the little sculptures had gone here to there and everywhere. Well, that's okay, so someone had been doing a bit of rearranging, didn't like how they'd done it, seemed a bit clumsy. Got into my shed, door never locked, everything that I own is in it. Seemed all right, and then I noticed some smelly socks. Well, I didn't know they were smelly at the time, some wet socks in the middle of the floor. Anyway, it turns out, and a little sort of complete mumbo-jumbo bit of spiritual nonsense. I'm not saying that, I'm saying that his particular form of spirituality is absolutely nonsense because he's a walking fucking lie. I've met so many spiritual people, normally who smoke too much dope, who are just massive egotists, sort of rounding off the edges with dope. Anyway, it nicked my sandals. Well, I didn't mind that it nicked a pair of sandals. If someone comes to the house and wants something, they can have it. I prefer them not to take my laptop unless they download my current work. But beyond that, I'm not that hassle. We've lost lots of stuff over the years. And I thought, okay. But then I thought, hello, this is fucking weird. He hadn't nicked a pair. He had nicked one from two pairs. So he had a croc and a walking sandal. So obviously, you know, I thought, well, fuck that. I put them aside thinking, well, he might turn up, and he didn't. And well, he did turn up about 3 weeks ago. I knew precisely who it was. He came in, bowed very humbly, you know, opt sat-nat, damn, you know, and all this sort of crap. And I said, you just, you know, don't come any further. You violated something very precious. You've created fear in this house. This door is open to anyone who wants to walk through it. And I'm now going to ask you to walk straight back out of it. And I don't want to see you for a month. Come back in a month and we can talk. But for the time being, you're out. It actually turned up today. He bought the 2 shoes back. I said, what am I supposed to do with these fucking shoes? I've thrown the other 2 away. As I apologised profusely, he said, but I took a stone as well. I said, oh. He said, I bought it back. So I said, oh, that's very sweet. He said, thanks very much indeed. Right, did you give it another month? I don't know, why am I telling that story? But anyway, I can't remember. I mean, there was a serious point to that. So, who did it come from? Who said something? Oh yes, about oh that's right. Yeah, the sort of giving. You take what you want. You take what you need. And I mean, I think that was the case. You know, like with that downloading stuff. I mean, I'm really happy if some, you know, group of kids somewhere or other decide they want to print CRASS t-shirts and they can make a living out of it. That's great. Why not? Wonderful. It's a bit of a piss off if Gautier does it, but at least they got diamond studs, I think. And it would be nice if those people, I mean actually they did, I think DK, somebody or other rang up G once to ask, and she just told them to piss off. You know, she didn't say they couldn't. She just told them to piss off. She couldn't be bothered to fucking talk to them. So, yeah. So anyway, my attitude is pretty easy on all of that. I've got better things to do than worry about what happened 30 years ago. Really. Is that it? Well, thanks for sitting through the movie. I thank myself for sitting through it. Actually, it was nice seeing a different version. It was a bit. That one was a bit more pop orientated, I thought. Anyway, yeah. Thanks very much for sitting it out and for putting up with me.
Would you be prepared to come and do a bit of music with Eve, which we could tempt her down here, or?
Yeah, we talked about it.
Kind of crass reunion. I don't even be up for that.
No, we did, because I know you invited her and Mark to come down. Mark would find it very difficult because I don't know whether he wrote back to you.
It was Charles, wasn't it?
Charles, yeah, he's also Mark, yeah.
So, I see, right.
Yeah, he calls it, yeah. That's right.
She did.
Yeah,
He wrote back.
yeah.
So,
And she said that Chaz would actually find it quite difficult just because of the way he worked. And I don't know whether she explained that when she wrote back to you.
She said a bit sketchy, but yeah.
But we talked to each other of perhaps putting something. Yeah, we'd love to. We'd be happy to do that. I mean, what form it would take, I really don't know.
Anything you want. It'd just be great to hear what you're up to these days. You know what I mean? Taking a bit more of a kind of tangent musically. That'd be
I mean, obviously, I'll try and get Louise, who's the woman I work with all the time. In my recital stuff.
Right.
Recital, Lord, that sounds cool. Gigs. I meant reciting, I suppose. Anyway, I mean, I'd certainly, will do. I mean, certainly not until later on in the year, so an awful lot coming up over the next month or two, 3.
Yeah.
But certainly.
Wicked.
Yeah.
Cool.
As long as I get a CRASS burger.
Yeah, you know.
Great. Good day. Well, thank you very much indeed.
Yeah.